Good morning, welcome, and I'm Virginia. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The Paranormal Astrologer. Today we are going to take a look at the paranormal side of life instead of the astrology. But first, you can check out my webpage, which is www.theparanormalastrologer.com. And on that page, you can see how to contact me for a reading at info@theparanormalastrologer.com, as well as if you care to sign up and subscribe to my newsletter, which is a monthly newsletter, astrological FYIs and tidbits. It'll come right into your mail, and that's $4.17 a month. And with that, I have all of the astrological energies for the month, as well as the tidbits about astrology, which are a myriad of notes that I'm releasing now to my subscribers from all the classes I took, as well as taught, as well as insights into reading and delineating charts, which takes a lifetime to learn. I'm still learning, as well as I'm sure every other astrologer out there will tell you it does take a lifetime to learn. There are so many nuances to it. Okay, with that, I want to get on to this paranormal story, which I'm sure you're going to find very interesting. I've been to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania a number of times, and every time I've had an experience. So the last time I went was, I believe it was November of 2018. It was that or either that or 2019. My years are running together. But anyway, so my boyfriend Mark and I took off from the Jersey Shore, headed due west. Went through Philadelphia, and it was about 3.5 to 4 hours before we got to Gettysburg. It was a beautiful fall day. We got into town. We were staying at the Farnsworth Inn, which, if anyone's familiar with that, its reputation is it's extremely active on the paranormal side. When I go out to an area that is known for its paranormal activity, I don't want to know specifics. I do not want to know the stories. I want to go in as a clean slate and see what I pick up, so I know that I'm not being influenced by anything. So with that being said, we checked in. We checked into the older part of the inn. So we had to come back outside, go into a side door, and up a very long, steep, narrow staircase, which was an original. And when you get to the top of the landing there, it's so tiny. If you reach your arms out, you would touch the door that we went into, as well as the opposite door, which was another room. In front of us was a long hallway that ran horizontally. If you went to the left, you went down into the main part of the house, which is where they also served dinner and breakfast, which was absolutely marvelous. And to the right, there were other rooms. I don't remember if there was one or two, but originally that was the porch area where there were soldiers that were on that porch area fighting and shooting down the street towards the Jenny Wade house, which is another story. We found out later that these soldiers, as they were wounded, would fall back onto the staircase. They lined the staircase, and it was blood-soaked. This is what we were told later. So we check into the room. I believe it was the Roosevelt room, if I remember correctly. And we went in and started to set everything down and get ready for the evening. And I said to Mark immediately, I'm keeping the light on tonight, because these spirits and activity tend to find me. So I needed to rest. So I said, we're keeping the light on. Okay, fine. We lay down to go to sleep. The first thing was, it was so frigid in that room. This cold took over, which I've experienced before, and anyone who is sensitive at all will tell you this cold starts from the inside out. It's colder than the coldest winter day you could imagine. So also I wanted to mention, before this, I scouted the room for anything that would be, how do you put it, that would be there to kind of lure the public into believing that the place is haunted. I found nothing. And I checked corners, I checked under the bed, I checked vents, I checked everything. There was nothing there. Okay, so tried to go to sleep. We could not get to sleep. It was not only cold, but the air was thick with spirit. It was active. So the first thing that happened, it was about 10:30, 11, maybe a little bit later, just kind of, okay, maybe we're going to fall off to sleep. And very distinctly and extremely loud in the right-hand corner of the room behind me, which I was on the right side of the bed facing the door to the outside, to the staircase. Right-hand corner, it sounded distinctly as if someone had put their hand into a bowl of empty wrappers, candy wrappers, and were crunching them. And we looked at each other, and as suddenly as it started, it stopped and jumped to the front of the bed for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and then it jumped specifically to the left side of the bed. 1, 2, 3 seconds, and done, it stopped. We looked at each other, okay, that was interesting, looked around, remember the lights were on. Okay, lay back down again. I would say about 10, 15 minutes later, the next thing we hear are like boots coming up the steps, like we thought people were checking in. They were heavy boots, definitely a man with wooden soles on the heels and hitting, like walking against a wooden floor, and heavy where you actually felt the floor give way, even though it was in the hallway. As I said, we thought people were checking in. The next thing we know, the sound came through the door, directly past us, and we felt a person walk past. We felt the indentations in the floor and the sound of the boots hitting the wood. Walked past us and out the other wall. With that, Mark jumped up because it seemed like somebody had come into the room. We saw nothing. We saw nothing. And we looked at each other. I was glad he was there to experience it with me, because I remember him saying he was interested in this but had never experienced a lot. And I said, well, just hang around with me and I can almost promise you, you will. With that, we start to lie down again to try to go to sleep. I felt someone very slowly go to grab my ankle, very slowly squeezing. And it startled me so much, I kicked my leg out and screamed, no, and it went away. At this point, I'm a little bit agitated because not only do I need to get to sleep, but this is getting unnerving. So I finally fall back to sleep, or I fall to sleep, actually. By this point, it must have been maybe 1 in the morning, so I must have slept about 2 or 3 hours, and the next thing I know is I opened my eyes like quickly from a deep sleep, and standing right next to me against the bed, hip level, was a tall black figure. When I say black, it was ink black. You could not see through it. And remember, the lights were on. And again, I was so startled, I thought someone had broken in, and I swung my arm out and again screamed no. And this figure took off across the room and just scattered. And the thing that was odd is I really didn't feel threatened by it. This figure was standing at attention. At least that's what it looked like. And the despair and the anguish and the sadness that I felt from this figure was overwhelming. I said, okay, that's got to be someone that is carrying this emotion over from when they were there. The next thing that happened after I started to fall asleep again, because it was very, very difficult to do that after that experience, I literally felt a cat jump up on the corner of the bed by my head. And anyone who's had a cat in the house, you know that feeling. It's distinctive. At this point, it's about 6 in the morning, so I said, well, I'm not going to get any more sleep. So Mark and I got up and we got ready to go down for breakfast. When I got downstairs, the woman that was the waitress, who was just wonderful, she was filled with historical facts, and she was just lovely. She came over to the table to give us our coffee, and she looked at me. I hadn't said anything. She looked at me and she said, I see the spirits kept you awake last night. And I looked at her and I said, you're not going to believe what happened. I started to tell her, and she said, stop. I don't want you to tell me. I want you to go take the history tour. they talk about the paranormal things that have gone on in this house. And I said, okay, we were due to leave that day. But I said, okay, let's hang around and we'll go take the history tour, which was later on in the afternoon. So fast forward to lunchtime, we're out and about, and we stop to have some lunch. And the waiter had been a tour guide years ago at the inn. And, we said we were staying there. We didn't start talking about anything paranormal. But he then relayed to us about when he was a tour guide, and they claim, well, there's a little story to this before I tell you what happened to him. During the Civil War, there was a man that lived there that had gone across the street to the other house to speak to whoever was living there. He had a 2 or 3 year old little boy that went to follow his father, so came out the front entrance and went across the street, and the little boy was run over by a carriage and a horse. The dear little soul passed away 2 or 3 days later. They had brought him upstairs, not far from where our bedroom was. And of course, the father was absolutely devastated. I do believe that was the black figure that I saw and felt. But this waiter went on to tell us that as he did the tour and how the other people in there do the tour, they would actually put candies in their pockets because supposedly this little boy loved candy, and they noticed that candy would be disappearing. They would put candy out and it would literally disappear throughout the house. And they would put candy in their pockets. And as they did the tour, they would notice by the end of the tour, 1 or 2 were missing and there were little candy wrappers. I found that very interesting because we had not told him anything. The next thing that happened was we went on the tour that evening. And as we're listening to these stories, everything else became verified. The soldier walking through the house, other people had heard this. And also I failed to mention the sound of the boots, the wooden boots against the floor, against the hardwood floor. Our room was carpeted, so there was no way that sound would come through. The other thing that was very interesting was they started telling a story of a nurse that was evidently on duty during the Civil War. And they claim that even today she's still on duty because if you check in there and you're tired or you're not feeling well or you seem to have a headache or your feet hurt, you will actually feel her hand against your head, like wiping your brow, or will actually try to rub your feet. I guess that's what she was trying to do when she grabbed my ankle. Okay, so that was very interesting. They also spoke of a ghost cat that seems to roam the building, and they said they actually hadn't heard any stories about that cat recently, until mine. But the most interesting to me was when they spoke about a police officer and his wife who had come down for the weekend and had checked in to the room across from where Mark and I were. And this gentleman decided, he heard it was the place had been haunted, so he set up a camera. In the middle of the night, he woke up because the door to the suite was wide open. Now, these are very old doors. They do not have normal locks and normal doorknobs. You have to really, it takes time and strength to open the door. So, and you would hear it. It was totally open, and also it locks from the inside. So he gets up thinking somebody broke in, and he goes all the way down the steps, looks around, even outside, finds nothing. He comes back upstairs, and he decides to play the camera back. What did he capture on this camera but the black figure that I had seen and felt? He woke his wife up and told her, "Get dressed, we're leaving." So I found that extremely interesting that everything was verified. It's definitely a place that if you're interested in the paranormal, I would check it out. Although people go there looking for this sort of thing and don't experience anything, and other people go and they experience wild manifestations. So I hope you enjoyed that little event, that story that happened to me, and I will be sharing more of these sorts of stories in the future. So enjoy your day. Right now, we're expecting a nice little ice storm here in the Northeast. but spring's coming. So blessings, and until the next time, enjoy.